Hello everyone and welcome to this new video tutorial. In this video we will design together a workout tracker app and we will mainly focus on the UI features in Nova. We will see together how to use the design tools to build the UI of your apps. If you want to complete this app with logic, stay tuned because soon we will release another video where we will show you how to use circuit and all the logic features to complete the app. But for now, let's start building the design. So let's start with the first screen. That will be a welcome screen. That we want to make it a bit captivating because it's the first screen that the user will see. So let's go in the toolbar and let's select the screen tool. And let's pick a size that we want to work with. Now we want to add a background image to the screen. So to do this, we go to the details panel and we go to the Add Wrapper button and we select a container. To make this container visible, we want to drag it above the screen. Now we can add an image to this container. And here we can copy and paste the URL of the image that we want to have as the background. For example, we can pick this one and copy and paste the URL here. Now we want to add the logo of our app. So let's go to the widget picker and let's select the image. Let's drag it inside the screen and let's also make it a little bit smaller. And let's also put it in the center. Also from here you can copy a URL of an image or you can upload it from your assets. Now let's add a text widget. Let's go to the toolbar and let's select the text widget. And we write something like, "Welcome to our workout tracker." And from the details panel of the text widget, we can modify the text as we like. For example, let's pick a font. And let's also make the text bigger. Now let's select this text and let's drag it inside the screen. Let's also change the color. And now we want to add another text widget to add another description for our app. So let's select again the text tool. And let's write something like, "Never lose track of your workouts." Now we want to go to the layout options of the text in the sizing option and we select auto both for the width and the height. We want to make this text a little bit bigger and also let's change the color to be white and let's drag it inside the screen. Now let's add a call to action button. Let's add again another text widget. And this time we write "Get started." And again we select auto for the sizing options. And we want to select again the font that we used before and make it a little bit more bold and maybe a bit bigger. Now we want to add an arrow icon next to this text. So we go on the widget picker and let's select the icon. And from the details panel, we can select another icon to display and we search for arrow. And we also make it a little bit smaller from the size property. Now we select both this text widget and the arrow that we just added and we select Command G and now these widgets are grouped. But we want to put them in a row, so we go to the details panel of the group and we select the horizontal direction. And now these two widgets are grouped in a row and I can change the different alignments. In this case, I want to keep them in the middle of this row. And I can also change this spacing value if I need to. Now, because we're building a button, we want to add some padding around these two widgets. So we go in the row details panel and we add a wrapper. We add a padding wrapper. We want to select the sizing option for this row to be auto, both for the width and the height. And now we want to have a background color. So the easiest way to do this for buttons is to add a material wrapper. So again, we open the wrapper menu and we add a material wrapper. Here we can give a background color. For example, I can select the same one that we have in the logo to match the rest of the design. And I also want to add some border radius, so I go to border and I remove the side because I don't want it, and I add some border radius. Now we can drag this button inside the screen. Now let's add another action. If the user already has an account, they can log in. So let's copy and paste this text and we put it here below, and here we write already have an account. And now let's copy and paste this text again, and here we write login. We change the color of the login text to make it look like a link. Let's make it a little bit darker. And now we want to maybe make this text a little bit smaller, and also this one. And now we select both of them and we press Command G, so we group them, and again we put them in a row. We pick the horizontal direction and we change the spacing. We make them a little bit closer. Also, we go to the sizing option and we pick auto and auto. Now we have all the elements for our first screen. I want to select all these widgets that are at the bottom part of the screen, and I want to group them together in a column. So I press Command G, and this time I pick the vertical direction to have them distributed in a column. Also, I change the alignment and I put them that they stay on the left side, like this. And I want to select the button, and I want to change the sizing of the button to be expand, so it takes the entire size of this column that we just created. Now I also want to make the screen in a vertical layout, so I select the screen, and in the details panel I select the vertical direction. Now we select the column that we created before with the text and the call to action and the logo, and we press Command G to group them. And we make sure that they're distributed in a vertical direction, so in a column. Now we want to change the order of them. We can do it with the arrows. And now we want to select this column that we just created, and in the layout option we select expand both for the width and also for the height. And we also go in the spacing option and we select between. To make it responsive, we also want to make sure that this section is set to be expand. But now we need to add some padding at the top, the bottom, the left and the right. So we select this column that we just created and we add a padding wrapper. And here we can adjust the values as we want. For example, we can pick 30 for the top, and we can pick maybe 24 for the sides, and also maybe 24 for the bottom. I maybe want to add a little bit more spacing in between these elements, so I select the column and I change the value of the spacing to a higher value. But I also want these two elements to be a little bit closer to each other, so I select both of them and I group them, and I press the top arrow to reposition them where they were before. And now I just select again the column that I just created, and here I change the spacing value. And also I change the sizing to be auto. And maybe I make it even a bit with more spacing. Now to complete this screen, I want to add a last detail. I want to make these elements a little bit more readable, so I want to add a gradient below them, but above the image. So we select the entire screen and we add another container as a wrapper. And this time we put it above the container that we created before. And from the color filling, I can select a linear gradient, and I will make the first color to be a dark blue. And the second color, I will pick a similar blue, but this time I will make it transparent by putting the opacity at 0. Now here I can select the position of the gradient. And maybe I'll make the second color to be a little bit more visible. So now the image is a little bit faded and the content of the screen pops up a little bit more. Now let's design the login and sign up screen. Because they're gonna look very similar, let's design them together. So let's start by adding a new screen. And also let's add another one. Now we want to pick a background color for the screen. So we select the screen and we go to the details panel, and in the color property, we select maybe a blue that we used before. And we do the same also for the second screen. Now we want to add the logo to both screens. So I can just copy and paste the one that I added before. I can press Command C and Command V, and then I paste it. Or I can also press Option and drag it inside the other screen. Now we want to add a text widget. In this text widget, we already changed the color to be white so we can see it. We can write in the first screen, create account. And we change the sizing option of this text to be auto, both for the width and the height. And we also change the font family to be the same one we used before. And let's also make it a bit more bold. And also bigger. We put it in the center of the screen. Maybe let's make it slightly smaller. And we copy and paste the same text in the second screen, but this time we write "Welcome back." Now we want to add the fields where the user can add their email, their name and their password. And to do this, we open the widget picker and we select the text field widget. We drag it inside the first screen, and first of all we change the sizing of the height to be auto. Now we can make it a little bit longer. And we can change the design of the screen. To do it, we need to go in the details panel and add a decoration. Here, for example, we can add a fill color. First, we toggle the field, and we can add a fill color that we like, maybe a lighter blue. We can also add some border. Let's add an enabled border. Let's make it outlined. And here we add a border and we select a color, maybe like a lighter blue. And we make it a little bit more visible. Maybe let's put it a bit thinner and maybe also a bit darker. Okay, now we can add some border radius. And we can add a label text. because this is the create account page, we can, for example, let the user write their email, and we change the label style. We pick the font that we used before, and we also make the color to be maybe a gray, so the text now it's visible. And we also want to add a prefix icon. Here we select an icon widget, and from this brush button we can modify it. So we click it, and here we can modify the icon. So we select here a mail icon, and we can also change the color to match the rest of the design. Maybe let's make it a little bit smaller. Now let's also add a border for when the field is focused. So let's make it outlined like before. Let's add a border, and this time we pick the same yellow that we used before. The focus border will appear when we use the app and we type inside the text field. So that's why now we don't see it. But if, for example, we select this screen to be the home screen and we play the app, now we can see the border. And for example, I see that I also want to add some border radius to the focus border, the same value that we added before. We can test it again. And now when I type in it, I see that the text is black, so I also want to change the style of this text. So to do it, let's select the text field, and let's go to the style here. And here we change the font, and we also change the color. We also want to change the cursor color because the background is dark, so we want to put a color that is more visible. Let's test it again with the play mode. Now when I type, I can see the text, and also I can see the cursor again. Now let's duplicate this text field a couple of times. First we duplicate it, and here we write instead the username, and we can also change the prefix icon to be now maybe a profile icon, and also we add another text field. We duplicate it again, and here we write password. And we also change the icon again from the edit button. Here we select another icon, and we search for like a key icon to indicate the password. Now let's duplicate this text field again, and here we do repeat password. Also, in the fields where the user types the password, we can also obscure the text. We can go in the details panel of the text field and toggle obscure text. We can also do the same for the fields above. Now let's add a button to confirm all of this, and we can just copy and paste the one that we created before, so we maintain the same design and it's faster. And here we change the content of this button, and we write here in the text, we select the text widget and we write maybe create account. And now we also want to add the same action that we added before here with already have an account, and instead switch to the login page. So we can just copy and paste this one again. We can press Option and drag it inside the screen that we just created, and we can keep it in the bottom. So now let's copy and paste some of these elements that we just created in the screen to the login screen, so it's faster to create it. Here we just need maybe the email field and the password field. And also we want to duplicate the button and we put it inside the screen, but this time we change again the text and we write enter. And we also want to duplicate again this text with this action, but this time it switches back to the create account page. So we duplicate it, and here we write don't have an account yet, and we change login to sign up. Also in the login page, we want to add a forgot password button. So we add a text widget, and we change already the color to be more visible, maybe like a gray, and we write forgot password. We go to the sizing option of this text, and we change it to be auto. Now that we have all the elements for the screen, we can focus on adding the layout features to make them responsive and to organize the elements a little bit better. So let's start with the screen. Let's select first the text fields widgets, and we select Command G, and now they are grouped together, but I want to distribute them in a column. So I pick the vertical direction, and here I can adjust the spacing as I want. Also, I make sure that the height is set to auto. Now I select the create account text and also this column that I just created, and maybe also this button, and I also group them and make sure again that they are distributed in a column. So I pick the vertical direction. And again, I can change the spacing if I need to. And I also change the height to be auto. Now I can select the entire screen, and I change the layout of the entire screen to be a column. Now I select the column that I created before, and I change the width, the spacing of the width, to be expand. Now I select all the elements that are inside the screen, and I press Command G to group them, and I see that I already distributed in a vertical orientation, so it's a column, but I changed the height to be expand, and I also changed the width to be expand. Now I need to reorder them as they were before, so I put the logo at the top and the fields in the middle. Now I select this column that I just created, and I change the spacing to be between. Now I want to add the padding wrapper, and as we did before, we add some padding at the top, also to the bottom. Now we repeat similar step for the other screen. First, I want to select the forgot password text and the password text field, and I group them, and I put them in a vertical orientation, so in a column. Now I want to change the alignment to be on the right side at the top, and change the spacing value to a smaller number so they are a little bit closer. And I also go to the sizing option, and I put them to auto, so now they take only this space. And now I select this column that I just created, the other text field, and the welcome back text, and I group them, and I put them in a vertical orientation, so in a column. I also want to change the spacing of this column. And I also change the height to be auto. But I also want to have a different spacing between this text and these two text fields. So I select this and the text field above, and I group also these two, and I reposition them where they were before. And now I want to select the same spacing that I had here to make a consistent design. So if here it's 22, I will pick the same number for here. Now let's select this section that we just created and the button, and we group them. And we put them in a column. Now I want to change the spacing of this column to be in between. So now when I resize it, the spacing will adapt to the height of this column that I'm choosing right now. But I also want to have more spacing here to have this text field a little bit more centered. So I will change them to a higher value. Now again, I will select all these elements that we have inside the screen, and I press Command G to group them and change orientation to be a column. Now I select the main screen, and I also change the orientation of the screen to be a column. And now I select the column that we created before inside, and I change the width to be expand and also the height to be expand. And I also want to change the spacing to be in between. Now again, I want to add some padding, so I click on the Add Wrapper button and pick the padding wrapper. And I make sure that I select the same values that I created before, so the design is consistent. So 40, 30, and 10 and 10. 40 for the top, 30 for the bottom, and then I keep 10 and 10 for the sides. So now that we designed the login screen and the sign up screen, let's design the home screen of the app, which is going to be a screen where there is a list of workouts that the user can pick from. So let's start with an empty screen. And let's match the background with the other screens that we created before. Now we want to add an app bar to this screen, so we go to the details panel, and here from app bar, we select the app bar widget. From this icon, from this brush icon, we can edit the app bar. So we click on it, and now we open the details panel for the app bar. Here we can change the background color, so we can match the same one as the background of the screen. And we can also change what we have in the space for the title. Instead of having a title, I want to show again the logo of the app. So to do it, I can click on the title widget and substitute it with another widget. So I pick image. And now I click on the brush icon next to image. So I can open the details panel of the image and upload the logo that I used before. And now I want to make it smaller, so I go to layout and I add a layout. I change the width and the height to be fixed and I make it smaller. Perfect. Now let's select the upper again and let's add an action on the side. So we go here to actions and we add one. Now we click on the place order and we substitute it with an icon. Now again, we can click on the brush icon next to the icon widget and we can modify the icon. For example, let's start by modifying the color so we can see it. And we can also make it a little bit bigger. And we want to add some padding here on the side, so we go to Add Wrapper and we add a padding wrapper. And we also change this icon with a setting icon. Like this one. Maybe let's make it a little bit smaller. Now let's add a tab widget to the screen. We go to the widget picker and look for tabs. We drag it inside the screen. And now we want to select the main screen, the entire screen. And from the details panel, we change the orientation to be vertical. Now we select again the tab view widget that we added before, and we change the width to be expand, so it will fill the entire width of the screen. And we also do the same for the height, so now it fits in the entirety of the screen. Now we want to change a little bit the style of these tabs, so I select this portion of the tabs, and we want, for example, to change the label color, and we can again pick a yellow color, and we also change the unselected label color, so also the other tabs are visible. And we also add a third tab. Let's also change the color of the indicator because now it's purple and we cannot really see it. So we go to indicator color and we pick again the yellow color. Also, I don't want this like harsh divider here, so I select again and I will go to the divider color and I will make it a little bit faded with the opacity. Now it's better. Now we design a card that shows the exercise that the user can pick from. So let's start by drawing a container. We pressed Shift so we can draw it square. And now we want to add a color to this container, maybe something like a light green. And now inside this container we want to add an image that represents the exercise. So here we can add a widget to this container. So the container will act as a wrapper of this widget that now we add. And we want to add an image. Now we go in the details panel of the image and we upload the image of an exercise that we want to show. Now we want to add a little bit of padding between the image and the borders of the container. So we go to the Add Wrapper button and select padding. And we move it above the container and below the image. So now the padding goes inside the container and outside of the image. And we can also adjust it a little bit. I also want to change the border radius of the container to make it round. Now that we have the icon for the exercise, let's add a text widget so we can write the name of the exercise. We change the width to be auto and also the height to be auto. And let's also change the font. Maybe make it bold. And let's also adjust the size. Now let's add an icon widget. We open the widget picker and search for icon. Let's put the icon next to the text. And we change it with the graph icon to show stats for the exercise. Now we select all of these three widgets, the icon, the name, and the image of the exercise, and we press Command G, and now they are grouped. And because they are distributed in an horizontal line, we want to put them in a row from here. But I want to have the spacing between the image of the exercise and the name of the exercise to be smaller than the space that it's here. So I need to create another row inside the row. So I select the image of the exercise, the name of the exercise, and I press Command G. And I make sure that they're distributed in a row. Now with the arrows, I can redistribute them as they were before. And now I can change the spacing of the main row to be between. So now when I resize the row, this space will adapt depending on how long is my row. Now I want to add a background color to this card, but first let's add a padding wrapper and then we add a material wrapper. Let's use the material wrapper to keep designing this card. So we can add a background color. Let's pick a similar color to the blue that we used before, but let's make it a little bit lighter. And let's also change the color of the text to be white and the color of this icon to be maybe a darker yellow. Also, I want to add some border radius to this card, so I select the row and I go to details panel of the material wrapper and I add a border. I remove the side because I don't want it, and I add a value for the border radius. Now I want to change the spacing between the text of the exercise name and the image, because I see that they are a little bit too far apart. So I select the row inside that we created before, and let's change the value of the spacing. And also change the width of this row to be auto. Now I want to duplicate this card a couple of times. And because we will have 3 different tabs, I want to make a tab for the exercise, for example, for the legs, another tab for exercise for abs, and another tabs for like arms. So we want to separate the muscle categories. We also want to change a little bit the design also for the cards. So we create 3 different components. So first we duplicate the card, and then we go and modify them as we like. For example, let's pick another background color depending on the muscle group. I go and I select the image on each 2 of the copies that I just created, and I select different colors for all of them. And I also want to upload different images just to indicate different type of exercises. So now we have 3 different designs for the different categories of exercises, and now we want to select each one of them and create 3 different components. So let's select the first one, and to create a component you need to go at the top of the details panel and select this icon, and you can name your component. For example, I call it legs, the first one. Then I create another component with the second card and I call it abs. And the third one, I repeat the same steps, but this time I call it arms. Now that we created these 3 cards, let's also rename the tabs to match these 3 muscle categories. So let's go to the first tab and let's call it legs. Now we select the second tab and let's call it abs. And the last one, we call it arms. Now let's select the content of the tabs, and from the details panel you can see here you can change what the tabs are going to show. First of all, because we have 3 different tabs, we need to add another children, so here we just write the number 3, and from here we can pick what each one of the tab will show. So for example, the first tab, we can select the placeholder widget that's here, and we can substitute it with something else. And because we want to show the list of exercises, we are gonna pick the list view widget. Now from the brush here, I can edit the list view with this list view widget, and I will first of all change the placeholder with the component that we created before for the exercises for the legs, with this one. So I want to go here, select on placeholder and search for the component I created before with the name that we gave it before, and let's select it, and now it will be shown in our list. Let's change the item count just to see how the list will look like with more exercises in it. For example, let's pick 10. And let's also add some separation in between each one of these cards. We go here to separator, now it's set to none, so there is no spacing between them. But in this case, we want to select fit spacing, so now we can control the spacing that's in between the cards. We can keep 20 or we can modify it and pick, for example, another number, maybe a little bit lower. Also, I see that these cards, they touch the edge of the screen, so we need to add some padding, and the list view comes already with padding in its properties, so we can simply add the paddings from here. So let's add some padding and let's customize it with the value that we want, maybe 16, like the spacing that we picked before between the cards. Now the first tab shows the list of exercises. Now we need to repeat the same steps also for the other two tabs, but in the other two tabs we will pick the other two widgets that we created. So let's create the content of the tabs, and here from the list of children we can also here pick the list view widget, and we can modify it. First of all, let's change the placeholder with the abs card that we created before. We add a separator as a fixed spacing, and we pick the same value we picked before. We also change the item count to be 10 like before, and also we add the padding. Let's repeat the exact same steps also for the last tab. So we go to the tab content, we select list view also for the last tab, and when we modify it, we select the arms card, and we add spacing and padding. And let's not forget to also put a higher item count. Now from here we cannot see the other two list views because we have the first one selected, but if I select the screen and make it home screen for a moment, I can go to the play mode, and from here I can test and I can see the list of exercises, and each tab has the different cards that we created. Now let's design the screen that will appear once the user clicks on one of the exercises and wants to log it. So we will put 3 text fields, one for the repetition, one for the sets, and one for the login the weight. And then we put a button that will save this information in the app. So let's start again with another empty screen. Let's pick the size that we used until now. And again, we go to the details panel and we select the same color we used before as the background. Now we want to add an app bar also here. So we go to the details panel, select for the app bar property, and then select the app bar widget. Again, we click on the brush icon and we can edit the app bar. So we also here pick the same color for the background, and we also change the color for the foreground so we can see the title of this page. And we can go next to the title property, to the brush icon. We can modify the title of the screen, and we call it, for example, add workout. Also, we want to change the font to the same one we use in the other parts of the software from here. And we make it a little bit smaller. And that's good. Now here we want to add the icon of the workout that we are logging, the name of the workout, and also the 3 fields that we mentioned before. So let's start it with the image. We go to the widget picker and we select the image widget. We drag it inside the screen, and by pressing shift we make it a little bit smaller. And now from the details panel we pick one of the images that we selected before. Now we want to add a background color to this image, so we add the wrapper and we add a container. Let's fill this container with the same color that we used before for this type of exercise. And now we want to again add some padding here, so we go to the add wrapper button and we select padding. And we need to drag it above the container, so now it's inside of it. And let's make it a little bit bigger for the image. And I also want to add some border radius from the details panel of the container. Now let's add the name of this workout. We select the text widget, and inside the screen we type the name of the workout. And we go to the layout options, and in the sizing we change it to auto. Now let's also change the color of this text. Maybe let's pick the same yellow, or let's make it a little bit brighter. And we also want to make the font size a little bit bigger, not this big. And now we also have the name of the exercise. Now let's select this image and this text that we just added, and we press Command G to group them, and let's put them in a column. So let's pick the vertical direction. And let's change the spacing between them. Let's make it a little bit smaller. And also let's change the height to be auto. Now we add the three fields that we talked before. We go to the widget picker and let's search for the text field. Let's drag this text field inside the screen and let's change the height to be auto. Now we want to customize this text field a little bit, and we want to add a decoration here from the details panel. And let's add a label text. The first field, let's write the repetitions. And we can add a label style, so we can make, first of all, change the color of the text so we can read it. Let's make it like gray. And let's change the font. Now we add a border. Let's go to enable border and let's pick outlined. Let's add some radius, and for the side let's pick like a gray color maybe, and also let's change the focus border. Let's add a side and we make this side yellow, and also let's change the border radius. Now we duplicate this text field a couple of times by pressing Option and drag. And for the other two fields, we write sets in the label, and the other label we write weight. Now let's create some buttons with a minus icon and a plus icon, so we can also add the values inside this field through these icons and not having to type, which sometimes it's easier. So let's go to the widget picker and let's search for icon. We add this icon widget inside the screen. Let's put it on the side of one of the text fields. Let's first of all change the color so we can see it. And now we want to add a padding wrapper around it. And also let's add a material wrapper. Okay, now we want to change the color of the icon again so we can see it again. And from the details panel of the material wrapper, we change the background color. Maybe let's pick a similar yellow to the ones that we used before. And I also want to change the border radius so we can make it round. Let's pick a high value for the border radius so it becomes a round shape. Maybe I will change a little bit the value of the padding. I will make it a little bit smaller so the button is not this big. This is a little bit better. And of course we want to change the icon, so we go in the details panel and from the icon property we search for remove and we pick an icon like this. And now we want to duplicate this and put it also on the other side and search for a plus icon. Now let's copy these buttons also next to the other two text fields. So let's press Option and drag. And let's do the same also for the minus icon. Now we need to distribute all these elements into a layout. So we select the first text field with the two buttons and we press Command G. And now we change the orientation to be a row. And let's also pick a spacing between them. And we also change the width to be auto and also the height to be auto. And now we repeat the exact same steps also for the other two text fields. So we select, we group, we put them in a row, we change the spacing and also the sizing to auto. And again, for the last one, we select, we group, we put it in a row, and we can adjust the spacing and the sizing. Now we also want the spacing between these text fields to be the same. So we select all of these rows that we just created, and we press Command G to group them. And this time we put them in a vertical alignment, so in a column. And we can adjust the spacing as we like. And of course, we also change the height to be auto and the width to be auto. Now the last element that we need for this screen is the button to confirm and save this exercise. So let's create a button. We start with a text widget. And let's write register exercise. Let's change the sizing to be auto. And let's add a padding wrapper to this text widget and also a material wrapper. So now we have a button. Now let's go again in the latest panel of the text and let's pick the font that we used until now. And we can also change to make it a little bit bolder and a little bit bigger. Now with the padding, we want to adjust the values a little bit on the sides, and this is nice. And now we want to make it look a little bit prettier, so we add a background color. Maybe we pick the same yellow we used before, and let's also add some border radius. And remove the side. Perfect. The last step is just to distribute all of these elements in the screen to be in a column. So we select the main screen, and here from this panel we select the vertical alignment, and now to center them again we select each one of the sections that we design, and from the width we go and pick expand. Let's make sure that also these are okay, and for the button is okay. Now we maybe want to have more spacing here, so I will select this group and add a padding wrapper and add a little bit of padding at the top. Now it's better. Now let's design a screen where the user can see the statistics for one of the exercises that they choose. For example, if they click on this icon, then they can see all the stats about that specific exercise. So again, let's start with an empty screen. And as before, we want to match the background color and also add an up bar, but this time let's just copy and paste the one that we used before. Always by pressing Option and drag, you can copy and paste widgets quite fast and easy. Now also we want to indicate which exercise is being selected, so let's just copy and paste this section that we designed before to indicate the exercise. Now let's design a small card that indicates each one of these entries and a number value that the user logged. So let's start with the text widget, and here we write the first field that we wrote, which was reps. Let's change the color of the text and let's make it a little bit bigger. Now let's also change the sizing to be auto, and let's copy this text, and here we write a random number. Now let's select these two text widgets that we just created, and by pressing Command G we can group them and we put them in a row. Now we want to change the spacing to be in between, so when this row is resized, the spacing between the two text fields will adapt depending on the width of the card. So now let's go to the wrapper picker and let's add a padding wrapper, and let's also add a material wrapper. Now let's change the height to be auto and also the width to be auto. No, we keep the width to be fixed, but now we need to change the background color of the material wrapper so we can see the numbers. We can maybe pick a similar color to the one that we used for the other cards, maybe a little bit darker. And now let's add a little bit more padding on the sides. And let's also add some border radius to from the details panel of the material wrapper. Maybe let's also add a little bit of elevation. This property adds a little bit of a shadow to the cards, making it a little bit more depth, adds a little bit more depth. So now we can duplicate this card that we just created a couple of times. And now we just change the first text field to match the other two values for the text fields that we created before, so sets and weight. Now we add another text widget, and here we write like overall stats. So these three cards, they indicate all the entries from all the entries from this exercise. Maybe let's make it a little bit darker. And now let's select all of these widgets that we just created, so the three cards and also this title, this small title, and let's press Command G to group them. And let's put them in a vertical alignment. Now we want to change the alignment. We don't want them to be centered, but we want them to stay on the left side. So we go here and we pick the top left. So now this text will go on the top left corner, and we can change the spacing between them. Now let's also change the height to be auto, so it will take just the space that the widget inside the column take, and then we can leave it like this. And let's just duplicate this entire column that we just created, and this time we change only the small title here and rewrite the last entry, so the user can also see what is the last entry of this specific exercise. Now we select the main screen. And also here we want to go to the details panel and change the distribution to be vertical. Now again we need to select the widgets inside and change the width to be expand, so it will take the entire width of the screen. Let's do the same also for the other two columns that we created before. And also to make them responsive, we need to make sure that also the widgets that are inside are set to be expand. So now that we all take the entire length of the screen, so even if I resize it, now the size of these cards will change together with the size of the screen. But of course we need to add a little bit of padding here because we don't want these cards to touch the edge of the screen. So we can just select these widgets and add a padding wrapper around them. Let's add a little bit more on the sides. And also from the second one, we add the padding wrapper, and let's add the same padding that we added before. Maybe we can also remove the padding from the top and the bottom because we don't need it. And now we want to maybe add some dividers. We actually just recently added this widget, so you can go to the widget picker and select the divider widget and drag it inside the screen. We also change the width of this widget to be expand and the height to be auto. Let's add some indentation from the details panel. Let's pick a similar value that we used for the padding, and let's copy and paste it, and let's also put it below. So now we have some separation between the sections of the screen, but maybe I want it to be a little bit less visible. So let's pick like a color that is more similar to the background color. And let's copy and paste this color also for the second divider. Now there is a little bit too much space in between all the widgets, so I can select the main screen, and from the details panel of the column that we created before, we can change the spacing value. Let's pick a smaller value, like 20. And now it's perfect. Now let's design the last screen, which is gonna be the settings screen, where the user can just see their information like the username, the email, the password, and like delete the account. So like always, let's start with another empty screen. And like always, we pick the same color for the background. And also let's copy and paste by pressing Option and drag the upper in the other screen. And we change the title of the screen to be Account Settings. Now we want to go to the widget picker and let's look for the list tile. And let's put it inside the screen. Let's change the background color for the list tile. We need to go to Tile Color, and with the picker we can select the color that we used before for the card in the last screen. And now we go to the title and we modify it. First of all, we change the color so we can see it. We put a white color, and let's also change the font to the one that we used until now, and we call this tile name. Now let's add a trailing to this tile, so a widget that is going to appear at the end of the tile. So we click here, and now from the widget picker we select another text widget, and from the brush icon we can select it and modify it. And here we write, for example, the username, and we change also the color of this text. This time I want to make it yellow, and maybe let's also make it a little bit bigger. This is good. Now I select the tile again, and from the details panel I go to shape and I add the shape. I want